Michael. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here, Tim.
Amazing. Before we get started, just a quick note, if you are hiring in crypto, you should use Campus. Out of all your candidates, help you pick out the real crypto natives, head to theblock.co/campus to get a 3-month free trial. Now, today's episode is around crypto grants funding, and that's obviously something that Thrive is particularly focused on. So, what is Thrive?
Yeah, so Thrive is, at this point, we believe the biggest builder protocol in the space. We support over $100 million in committed capital allocations from a lot of the top chains in the space. And we support builders and founders and very quickly working in crypto and with top chains and working in a way that creates value, that creates GDP for the ecosystems that they support.
And where did the idea for Thrive come from? Like, what inspired it?
Yeah, so I got into crypto way back in 2013. I read Satoshi's white paper and I was really inspired by what I believed was a treatise on fairness. This idea that with this big, open, transparent database, it doesn't matter who you are or where you are or what your background is. If you create value, you can and should and will be rewarded proportionate to the value you create. But I also believe that there was a problem with the blockchain because the blockchain is great at validating that a transaction is valid, proving validity of a transaction, but it's not great at proving value. And I believed even way back in 2013 that something like Thrive would need to exist to help decentralized communities to really deeply understand that value was created and be able to reward it. So even in November of 2013, I registered the domain for Thrive. But it turns out I was running another organization at that time. It would take another 8.5 years to sell that company, another few months for a friend to go on a walk with the beach with me. And he said, "Yo, Daniel, whatever happened to that Thrive idea of yours?" And I wondered who had built it. And so I went back and looked and nobody had. And I realized that I had to found another organization. And that was kind of the beginning of Thrive.
Cool. So you were sort of aware of crypto since 2013, but what point um, were you actively involved? Like, did you stay active throughout that time? Um, what was your journey like?
Yeah, I've been actively involved since about 4 years ago when I founded Thrive. I had been involved in crypto in different ways beforehand, but certainly not running a business. This is the first project, the first organization that I've been a part of within the context of crypto. And some background on kind of what Thrive does. We actually built kind of a product, a protocol that addresses sort of that major problem that I noticed way back in 2013. So the protocol is called Thrive Protocol. And what it does is it proves that value has occurred. And the way that it works is when somebody creates something of value, they submit evidence for that through the protocol. And that evidence is routed to some number of either certified experts, people who are capable of reviewing whatever that evidence is, data or code or financial information, and also some number of AI agents that score in the upper quartile of accuracy of those experts. And when a threshold of them agree that value is created, then a thing is paid out and it's attested to on chain. And what that allows for is it allows foundations and decentralized crypto communities for the first time to make investments in, not just a few teams or people and know that they're going to create value aligned with what they promise, but in dozens or hundreds, theoretically even thousands of teams, and know that they effectively have 100% capital efficiency with those investments. We really believe that it's been game changing in this space.
Sure. So how does that work in terms of the people that review the investments? Like, do they get paid for it?
They
Like,
do.
what's their incentive?
That's exactly right. So they get paid, and depending on the orientation of the review, it could be in different currencies of the communities that we support, or now that they are also earning Thrive points as they go too. But they only get paid when they accurately review. So they're heavily incentivized to review accurately.
And who reviews the reviewers?
So anybody can challenge the outcome of review. A reviewer who supposedly did not review accurately, or even the recipient, so the contributor or the builder whose product was being reviewed. And that is effectively reviewed by another level of reviewers who did not participate in the original review and have a level of accuracy that entitles them to, let's call it a special badge, special access.
Okay, so you go to sort of a hierarchy of review
That's exactly right.
agents. And at what point did you start introducing AI agents to the mix?
If we go back a year, we started to play around with AI agents, and that was a very, very small part of the process. It was, essentially all humans. Today, it's effectively flipped. So 90% plus of reviews are done by AI agents, and around 10% of reviews are done by certified experts who are, highly capable of reviewing, and against whom the AI agent's accuracy is being judged as well.
Sure. And how does an AI agent review this fully? So let's say the person's claiming, "Oh, I've gone and built the protocol. It's got so many users." How do they prove that in a way that the AI agent can actually verify it like properly?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be, a very quantitative understanding of exactly what it is that's supposed to be reviewed, and the agent has to have access to that information in order to do the review. So it's really important that when framing what needs to be reviewed, that that's being framed as accurately and directly as possible.
And why did you end up like? How come you've got to the point where it's 90% of agents reviewing it? Is it just because it's more efficient? What sort of led to that?
I mean, one of the really interesting things that we noticed was great reviewers, like experts, they tend to review at an accuracy rate of 93%, 94%, 95%. My accuracy rate currently after hundreds of reviews is 91%. Maybe it's crept up to 92, right? And when we first started playing around with AI agents, they were reviewing significantly worse than great reviewers. That's changed quite a bit, right? So now their accuracy rate is generally extremely high. Again, it's as high or higher than top experts. So with some agents, we're seeing 95, 96, 97% accuracy. And so really it was just a question of efficacy. We want to be sure that at scale, work products are being paid fairly. And to be paid fairly, they need to be reviewed fairly. And being reviewed fairly, is really, it's really a question of accuracy, whether we're talking about humans or agents that are trained by humans or other
Okay, and what
agents.
sort of AI are you using for this? Like in terms of like which platforms, and then as you are you modifying the AI, or are you just giving it custom instructions in order, you know, to make it effective?
Yeah, so we're constantly testing, different agents or different platforms against each other. We're agnostic about the agent or the modality. Really, the only thing that we care about is accuracy, and so Thrive being agnostic to modality, it's really important for us to continuously test, and that will always be the case.
How do you confirm the accuracy?
Right. So the accuracy initially is confirmed because there are a threshold of experts and agents that effectively find agreement. And depending on the type of thing being reviewed, that threshold can be different. I mean, on average, usually it's around 70%, but in some cases, you want that threshold to be as much as 90% or, even 100%. So that's how we do the confirmation initially. If it's the case that there's disagreement, for whatever reason, then it can be doubly confirmed. And, then it goes to sort of a higher review process.
Okay.
Additionally, the contributors or the builders who are submitting evidence, they're always getting feedback, right, from those reviewers about why it is that whatever, let's say, the milestone was that was confirmed was actually confirmed, or why it was not confirmed, and how they can improve their work product, resubmit, and get the confirmation that they're looking for.
Okay. And
And I
what's the
can,
biggest check?
yeah.
Go for it if you like.
Well, I was going to kind of switch over to the other side, which is a really interesting component of the work we do. So when Thrive started, right, I'd been thinking about this protocol for years before we began to build it. And so we had a sense that the technology was likely going to be effective in orienting toward and guaranteeing a level of capital efficiency that is fundamentally distinct in the space. That was cool. The piece that we didn't expect was that, we have kind of implicitly created this social graph of top builders and teams and founders that work through Thrive and in many ways kind of prefer to onboard into crypto through Thrive. And that has been a really unexpected piece. And what we learned is effectively this: when builders come into crypto, or even builders who are in crypto, if you're a builder and you want to work full time, it's really hard to do that, right? You don't just have to be a builder if you want to get funded by top ecosystems in the space. You also have to be an insider, a salesperson, a diplomat, be willing to go months without being paid sometimes, be potentially publicly humiliated on Twitter if you get onto the wrong Twitter space, right? And if you're a great builder and you're working at Google, why would you go into crypto? And the answer for many builders is it doesn't make any sense, right? That's why there are somewhere around 7,200 full-time builders in crypto, and there are around 30 million full-time builders, developers in the world, right? So Thrive made it a lot easier for founders and creators and builders to onboard into top ecosystems in crypto, because what they do is they effectively apply for an ecosystem within 7 days. Because we have such a fast forwarded process, they're able to get a yes or no answer within 3 days. After that, they can be building. And so we've made the process of onboarding into crypto, of getting paid for actually building and not being all these other things, a salesperson or a diplomat. We made that process so much easier, and it's allowed us to fund. We've funded at this point over 1,500 top teams and builders and creators in the space, and it's been a really exciting kind of accidental addition to the experience that we've had here.
Okay, and you talk about sort of its role in it with regards to mindshare and also community building. Would you say there's sort of some comparisons with Kaito? Like, obviously that's, it's very popular right now as sort of a marketing tool.
Yeah, I see Kaito as, by the way, I love what Kaito is doing. Thrive has a Kaito leaderboard. I think there's a lot of really interesting things that we can do adjacent to Kaito. I see Kaito as really wanting to own this space of being the intelligence layer in crypto, of being, I think what they call the mind share layer in crypto. Thrive, we believe that our opportunity is to build and create the first really true GDP layer in crypto. We fund effectively projects when they create value in line with the needs of ecosystems, right? And in crypto, there's a lot of hype around a lot of stuff, but very little actual value being created. And so we really believe that we have the opportunity to create a GDP layer, and I think that sits really nicely alongside a mindshare layer that Kaito is attempting to build right now.
Yeah, and you say it's been around for 4 years. How has the sort of growth been during that time? Like, has it sort of picked up more recently? Has it changed at all?
Yeah, so we were initially founded in September of 2021. So it's been almost 4 years. In a couple months, it'll be 4 years. And it's been an incredible experience. We have continued to almost double quarter over quarter for, I think, 10 straight quarters. We have been really lucky to support a lot of the top ecosystems in the space, and the committed capital or token allocations that go through Thrive have continued to grow and grow and grow. And we expect the same. At the end of the day, there are different ways to grow in crypto. A lot of projects grow through marketing and hype and market positioning. Thrive thought about things differently. We we didn't say a lot. We put our hard hats on, brought our lunch pails to school and did work every day. And, it's been nice to see that it's paying off and that we're able to support so many ecosystems in really meaningful ways.
Yeah. If you're that well connected to all of these ecosystems, have you wondered about creating a venture capital fund on the side?
It's a really interesting question because, somewhere probably a couple of quarters ago, people started, thinking of us almost as venture firms because we funded so many projects, right? So the answer is no, we haven't thought about creating a venture fund on the side. In reality, we actually partner with a lot of venture funds because when venture funds, um, uh, fund great teams and builders and put them in their portfolios, they want those builders to be able to have access to and build in the top ecosystems in the space. And we are a direct way in which great builders can have access and get paid appropriately. So right now we really enjoy our partnerships with the venture firms that we and the accelerators and the incubators that we partner with. We see ourselves as, again, occupying a slightly different space, seeking to build this GDP layer of crypto. And, in the future, we hope to just continue to expand those partnerships.
What are the biggest challenges to managing grant funding?
Huh. There are a lot of challenges. First, I'll start at the builder level. I'll talk about a couple different challenges. I'll start at the builder level. Unfortunately, I believe that builders, in large part in crypto, who work through ecosystems, have been socialized to think oftentimes in a grant farming kind of way, right? It's so hard to kind of figure out your way through the system and get funding from an ecosystem. Oftentimes getting funding is the victory as opposed to creating value, particularly because historically there hasn't been a lot of incentive to actually create value. Getting funding is 98% of the battle. And so on the builder side, I think there is a little bit of reimagination that needs to occur. Like builders, have the opportunity to kind of close their eyes and understand that we can make this industry operate in a way that looks a lot like all the other ecosystems, all the other industries that have boomed kind of in history, where together we need to think about what it means to build something of significant value that can scale, right? Which is not how a lot of builders who go through the grant process today think. Um, we're trying to support that reimagination because it's connected to the way in which funding is unlocked with Thrive. Builders get funds when they create value in line with the needs of ecosystems, right? So there's direct, and they don't have to be insiders, right? They don't have to be anything but great builders. On the ecosystem side, I think there's a real opportunity to collectively close their eyes and really deeply understand what they want. The way in which ecosystems historically have created a lot of quote unquote value, at least token value, right, is by creating hype and a lot of BS metrics, right? And that works for the short term, but it actually doesn't drive sustainability in ecosystems or in crypto as a whole for the long term, or even frankly, the medium term. And so from an ecosystem perspective, there's a real opportunity to kind of think about what it means to build and create and commit to sustainable value for the medium and long term. And I think when we have builders who are building for value creation, and we have ecosystems that are really committed to funding true value creation over time, as opposed to short-term hype metrics, then we are starting to talk about a crypto ecosystem that can drive real GDP, real value, that can invite more than 7,200 full-time builders, and so on and so forth.
Are there any ecosystems that you think have done really well at that?
Most of the ecosystems that we're working with are committed to that in one way or another, because that's that's practically our sales pitch, right? And so I think that what we're noticing is that there is more and more ecosystem commitment to that on an ongoing basis. one of our ecosystem partners is Zion, and I had a wonderful conversation yesterday with somebody in their foundation named Zay about exactly that. What does it mean to fund builders who create real value? Because our commitment is to real value for the medium and long term, right? And very consistently, I'm hearing that directionally, that's where foundations, are going, and frankly, that's where they need to go. Not just for the sake of their community, or let's say their token price for the medium and long term, but really for the sake of an industry that has the opportunity to be like one of two fundamentally game changing industries in humanity right alongside AI. But to do it, we need the real talent in this industry to not focus on value extraction, and instead to be focused on creating and adding value to the system.
Yeah. Do you think the sort of issue of value extraction is one of the biggest um, issues in crypto, and sort of one of the biggest things preventing it from growing even further?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a great mind coming into crypto, I'm oversimplifying here, but you have two choices, and this is a really hard one. Choice number one is you can make a lot of money in the short term by extracting value from the ecosystem. And that's what most great minds coming into crypto do. And it makes sense, right? They can set their families up, themselves, their communities up with generational wealth for, at a very short amount of time. And choice number two is that they can build something of real enduring value, right? That also creates a lot of wealth for them, but is way fucking harder and takes a lot longer. And with most human beings, that's a difficult decision set, right? With most human beings, even good human beings, they choose choice number one, right? It's easier, right? There's a very clear short-term path. And, when crypto gets enough people choosing choice number two, it's going to create enormous value, much more value than we could create with choice number one. But we've got to get there.
Do you think it's changed over the years? I feel like I want to say 2017, 2018. Okay, obviously 2017 you had the ICO rush. You had a lot of people wanting to extract value.
Right.
But I feel in general there were a lot of builders back then who were far more egalitarian, who sort of really wanted to I think just promote really like healthy growth.
Right.
Do you think it's changed much over the years? I do think you see a lot of everyone being focused on value extraction these days,
Right.
even if it's not as blatant as the sort of ICO mania.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty sad. I have a really good friend who is a venture capitalist, and this person has a portfolio of 150 or so investments that they've made over a number of years. And they were diamond hands, right? And recently they told me that they came to the conclusion that the only good option is to, as quickly as possible, sell, right? And that's a problem when you have people who have been in the ecosystem for years and years and years and years, right? Who have been committed to the projects that they've been a part of. And eventually they realize that if they're going to make any money in this industry, they have to figure out how to stop supporting those projects for the medium and long term, right? And I see a lot of people who have been in crypto for a while who eventually become exasperated with the space. They realize that they have to, do the same kinds of things that have worked for others, but they understood were bad for the industry. And, and it's important for us to notice that. And it's important for us to, go, wait a second, there's something wrong with a lot. There's something wrong with the way historically we've been thinking about tokenomics. There's something, wrong with the way that we've been thinking about how venture capitalists win, when they invest in projects, right? Because oftentimes for venture capitalists to make money off a project, they have to dump the token, and there's not enough liquidity to support that project. And so the venture capitalist wins, but the project loses. And that is an occurrence that is very, very common in our space, but that we need to figure out how to create a different path. So there's a lot broken that we need to fix. And unfortunately, people who've been around for a while have been seeing it for a while.
Yeah, there was a bit of controversy a while ago over whether or not VCs were good or bad for the space, because obviously they do provide a lot of funding and provide a lot of support, but ultimately their goal, reasonably, is to extract more value than they put in.
Right.
I was curious, do you have a view on VCs overall?
VCs in crypto tend not to act like VCs in other industries, right? They almost act more like hedge funds. And, um, you know, one of the things that I've noticed in general about VCs in crypto is that in general, they're not looking for real businesses that can create GDP for the industry, that can create real value for the industry. They're looking for hype machines that, they can sell the token as quickly as possible and make some money. It's hard for me to call that a VC, right? Like in our industry, they call themselves VCs, et cetera. But, real venture capitalists that, help support and build new industries and reap the rewards and benefits. What they do is they support great founders and great projects for the medium and long term, right? And when those projects win in a really big way, they win in a really big way too. We don't have enough of that in crypto. If we had more of that in crypto, I think we'd see more sustainability in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I do think a problem is the fact that the main goal is typically to get tokens as opposed to equity,
Right.
because I think the problem with a lot of tokens is partly due to the massively increasing number of tokens across the massively increasing number of blockchains. There's so much dilution. It's just hard for tokens to remain to keep their value or to increase their value in the long run. And then in particular, even with very popular projects that might be very widely used and have very good reputation in crypto, the token price doesn't necessarily reflect that, because partly because if it's a arguably pointless governance token, it's not capturing any of the value of the success of the protocol. It can go in a complete opposite direction to the actual growth of the protocol. So in a way, you're not necessarily aligned with the success of the project in a way that I think typically you are if you have equity.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And, I think that there is a real opportunity amongst the other problems that we talked about that need to be fixed to ensure that token value is aligned with project value, right? It's a simple thing to say, but historically, for regulatory reasons and other, right, it's been a really hard thing to do. And hopefully, as we get more clarity in the regulatory landscape, we can start really aligning those two pieces for most projects better, and hopefully that'll help. And you're right. I mean, when the pool is only so big, but the number of tokens are increasing at such a massive rate on almost a daily basis, it creates all kinds of issues, right? From that that impact the viability of even good projects.
Yeah, I definitely think once you get rewards, revenue sharing starts becoming much more commonplace. I think it then becomes much more interesting in buying tokens that you think are associated with the projects that you think are have really good fundamentals. And I think that becomes almost like the opposite of the meme coin cycle, where you just whatever captures the attention span of the moment, very short term trading. You then suddenly actually start to think which protocol is going to be here in 5 years time, and how can I get a percentage of the fees it's going to make. Yeah, I think we're
Totally
starting
agree.
to see some people call it fundamental season.
Yeah, I totally agree. We believe very strongly that now is the time in crypto for a flight to reality, for a flight to quality, for a flight to fundamentals. It's very connected to why Thrive exists and why I believe that we have grown as quickly as we've grown because we back projects with real fundamentals, and we make sure that they're funded, as they achieve, real credible um, uh, revenue milestones, TVL milestones, growth milestones that are supportive of the future of that project, of the ecosystems, in which they are existing, and also crypto as a whole.
Something I like to ask people: what crypto platforms or protocols have you been playing around with or experimenting with recently?
Yeah, I mean, beyond Thrive. Look, within the Thrive ecosystem, there's like so much cool stuff. I talked earlier about Zion. We're working with Polygon and with Hedera, funding a bunch of stuff on both of them. There's a lot of pre-TGE stuff that we're going to be launching soon that we're really, really excited about, like, Faraways and F-Chain, and, B-Life, which is a really interesting kind of Bitcoin layer two, um, and, and a bunch of others. I mean, we've just know ZK Verify, which is new ZK chain, connected to kind of a sister of Horizon and Zen. We just think that there's so much really interesting stuff in the space that's happening right now, and it's been really interesting to be alongside it and to ask a deeper question, which is like, who are the great teams and builders and founders that can help build and support and help grow.
For sure. And what do you think will be the biggest trend of 2025?
I think I hope I hope we've nailed it together, which is a flight to value, to quality, to GDP, to great builders and founders, and generally speaking, to people who are committed to building the future of crypto. We need it, and now is the time.
Amazing. And on that high note, that's all we have for today. I want to thank Daniel for joining this episode. And as a reminder, our newsroom works tirelessly to get you accurate, informed crypto news. If you want to stay ahead, read the blog. Thanks, and see you next time.
Thanks, Tim.